Hey everybody, I wanted to do a quick video covering the sentencing in the Whitmer case, the Whitmer kidnapping hoax state case. This was Paul Bellar, Joe Morrison, and Pete Musico. So there's a couple things that I want to cover about this. It's over 2 hours long, so hopefully I'm not going to make you guys watch all of it, but I want to cover certain things that are said by the prosecution in this, and also some of the defense lawyers. They upset me also with their kind of acceptance of the government's narrative that there ever was a plot with any member of the Wolverine Watchmen or whatever. So yeah, that's sort of what I want to touch on. So we'll go ahead and begin. Don't worry though, we won't play all of it.
Yeah, as to the PRVs, we object to scoring PRV 3 from years ago. We got to finish outside the gap.
I agree with you. I had already made a note, and
This judge is
probation
such a
is
jerk.
aware of PRV 3 going to be scratched.
Okay, as to fiscal 4, currently scoring it at 10 points.
All right.
These are public safety, public ordinance crimes. There is no specific victim. The sentencing guidelines do not define who a victim is. The plain and ordinary term meaning the term victim is a person against whom the criminal act is directed. This is an indirect crime, it's material support of terrorism. These guys were convicted of helping somebody else prepare to commit a criminal act. Their crime is directed towards Adam Fox, Barry Croft, individuals who trained at Lincoln, Michigan, not at any one particular person. And that was the argument that was provided by the government at trial, that they provided facilities. Furthermore,
You let someone train and do perfectly legal
professional treatment in order.
You let somebody do perfectly legal defensive firearms training on your property now because we've framed that person. Now you're providing material support for T. Unbelievable, guys.
Score 10 points.
It's ridiculous.
Well, or anticipated professional treatment.
Or anticipated professional treatment. Oh, that's fine. But to comply with the Hardy standard, there needs to be some evidence that there was psychological injury that was significant that either required or could require professional treatment. There's been no evidence that Ms. Whitmer is seeking professional treatment for anything, and this is an offense-specific variable and a defendant-specific variable. There's no evidence that Mr. Musico did anything that required Ms. Whitmer to seek professional treatment or receive professional treatment. Furthermore, there's no evidence that she's getting professional treatment. And that is, although that factor is not determinative, it is a factor that the court should consider. I've seen the letter that she wrote. We would object to that letter being included in the sentencing packet of the court file because she is not a victim of the offenses that my client has been convicted of. And based on my understanding, it's the same letter that was submitted to federal court. How does they differentiate?
You know what's interesting?
What
it's interesting that she didn't give a victim impact statement in the federal case. It wasn't read in the way that it is in this, and you guys will see.
Versus what Adam Fox is convicted of, Barry Croft is convicted of, or people in Lincoln, Michigan are accused of, Your Honor. You know, and there was a case in which alleged complaining witness who did not speak under oath at sentencing wrote a letter, and the court determined that it was sufficient to score 10 points as a result of that letter. And I've cited that case in my sentence memorandum.
Right.
But in that case, that person testified under oath at trial and was cross-examined at trial by defense counsel, and the court was able to observe her demeanor. That has not happened in this case.
Yeah.
As I indicated,
Whitmer hasn't testified
specific.
under oath.
That the conduct that Mr. Musico is convicted of, which was providing facilities, according to the argument advanced by the government, that providing facilities caused serious psychological injury that require or would require medical treatment. There's no evidence that Ms. Whitmer is unstable enough mentally because of the results or the actions of Mr. Musico that she either is currently seeking medical treatment or she needs to seek medical treatment and has not done so. And the court needs to look at when this offense variable was added by the legislature.
It's ridiculous.
Medical treatment, that's for poor people, Yana. That's for people who get victimized but don't have health care and can't go get mental health treatment. They didn't want defense attorneys to be able to come to court and say, yeah, this poor person was victimized, but because they didn't get medical treatment because they can't afford it, don't score this offense variable. That don't apply for Ms. Whitmer. She's got great health care. If she was really seriously psychologically injured and needed help, she can get the help. So the court should consider that factor heavily if there's no evidence that she is currently seeking psychological treatment. That's the OB4.
Because she's not.
Your Honor, my
She
argument mirrors Mr. Johnson's. Right? Mr. Morrison has been charged and convicted of providing a facility, nothing more. These, as Mr. Johnson pointed out, these are, defendant-specific, offense-specific charges that deal with the public trust, not an individual victim. Therefore, to allow this letter to be added to the pre-sentence report and go forward with scoring this, I find it to be inappropriate.
And Your Honor, just briefly, I agree with Mr. Johnson. I have the same arguments, same as Mr. Ballard. I do have a couple more arguments that are specific to my client, Mr. Beller. First of all, one of the other issues is, and I looked at this closely, when you look at, let's say OB3, for instance, it says in multiple offender cases, if one offender is assessed points for good death or physical injuries, all offenders must be assessed the same thing. There's no language regarding that in OB4, regarding the psychological injury of it. Why is that important in my argument? This is why it's important in my argument. The court sat through this trial. There was no facts presented to this court that my client ever discussed kidnapping Governor Whitmer. There was discussions at the back shack about getting an arrest warrant, not kidnapping. My client never prepared, planned, trained, or did anything regarding the kidnapping of the governor. In fact, he specifically denounced it on July 7th when he started his own group. At that hearing, or at the trial, the court heard actual audio where he specifically said, "We are defensive, not offensive. We're not about black bagging politicians." He denounced it. He went to training on July 11th and July 12th when
He denounced the plot that was put forward by government agents, by their informants. Those were the only people ever coming up with anything. And a lot of this was just people talking smack. There wasn't an actual plan. It just kind of disturbs me that this charade is even happening.
comes back, he sends a message to Adam Fox, which I provided in my pre-sentence memorandum on July 13th, after the last contact he had with Adam Fox, saying, here's that sheriff we were talking about. He never was a part of a discussion to kidnap the governor. He never was a part of the planning, preparation. When he left,
there wasn't any, except by the government.
July 29th was the same exact day that Adam Fox met with the informant Dan in Grand Rapids, and that's when Adam Fox came up with this idea to kidnap the governor. He'd already left the state.
Actually, the government came up with it, and Adam just went, oh, okay, but wasn't actually going to do anything and didn't have the means to do it anyway.
To Michigan. He wasn't a part of any conversation. So I guess the OB4, if they want to try to score it, they're somehow relationing my client's alleged training to Adam Fox, which ultimately led to this plot to kidnap the governor. My client didn't know anything about it. And that was clear throughout this entire trial, Your Honor. So to assess OB4 based upon the actions of Adam Fox, I think would be appropriate. I think it should be scored at 0. And I also echo the other arguments that Mr. Johnson made. I'm not going to repeat those because they're already in evidence, Your Honor. In the argument.
Who's going to respond for prosecution?
I will, Judge. Good morning. Sunitha Dadamani on behalf of the people, as well as Bill Ralston. Judge, I think there's two things here when we're talking about OB4, and I think there's two different things that they're bringing up. One is the governor of the state of Michigan a victim in this crime? And the answer is absolutely yes, because the Crime Victim Rights Act defines who a victim is. And it says that a victim is an individual who suffers direct or threatened physical, financial, or emotional harm as a result of the commission of a crime. And
there was no crime that was committed. Like, hello, this entire thing is so ridiculous. I want to move forward though, because there's a certain part where they get to their little closing arguments here where she says some really insane things, and I'd like to get to that. Okay, I think, let's see where we are about here. I think this is when Whitmer is going to be allowed to make her absurd statement. Yeah. I think that's what's happening.
Judge, we're asking to have our victim impact statement played at this time.
Yep. Yeah, here we go. So prejudicial. You have a judge that's supposed to be objective and impartial, and he's being told by the governor of his state that he better send a message to help defend our democracy.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.
It's not a
It's not
fair
easy
trial.
to turn the conflicting
fair
views
sentencing.
of 10 million strong, passionate people into a government that perfectly represents them. That is what our Constitution is for. We have elections because we must find a way to get things done while disagreeing in good faith about the issues that affect our lives. We debate and then we vote. Like all Michiganders, these three defendants are free to disagree, vote, or campaign against me. Instead, they took a different path. They supported a violent conspiracy and provided material support for terrorism. They chose actions that
Ridiculous.
are antithetical to what makes our nation strong and safe. I'm asked all the time what being the target of this conspiracy has done to me
The
and to my
FBI's
family.
conspiracy.
I want my family to know that their mom, their wife, their daughter, their sister is tough and stands up for what she believes in.
Right.
But I cannot tell them honestly that I am unfazed. I now scan crowds for threats. I think carefully about the
Please.
last thing I say to people when we part. I worry about the safety of everyone near me when I'm in public.
This is
I'm
such
reluctant to
nonsense.
share too much because I worry that it could endanger a loved one, a staff member, a police officer on my security detail. I am changed, and my family has changed. Ultimately, this isn't about me, though. A conspiracy to kidnap and kill a sitting governor of the state of Michigan is a threat to democracy itself.
Oh, here it
And this
comes.
kind of
They didn't even argue that at the first or second trial that anyone was trying to kill her. They said that they wanted to kidnap her and like leave her out in the middle of the lake or something. That was what they argued in the first case. So the government didn't even make that claim, first of all. Second of all, the FBI had been to her house before there was before anyone had gone to it. They had installed this pole cam that had 24/7 real-time surveillance. They had drones and planes flying overhead. They had a team and swarm of agents around the property. And then the FBI bought the vans for the ride along. And there were 5 people in the vehicle. 3 of them were working for the FBI. 2 of them were in the back of the car, didn't even know where they were going. So this was the FBI's plot. No one else's. She knew the entire time. She was aware of it. In fact, Barry Croft's lawyer, Joshua Blanchard, had filed a FOIA request to get the communications her lawyer had with the FBI because that lawyer had to recuse himself in this case when they tried to bring him in as a prosecutor in the retrial of Adam and Barry. And that FOIA request, interestingly, has gone nowhere. Haven't gotten a response still, because it will show the coordination between Whitmer's legal team and the FBI to manufacture this whole thing, and that she was never at any point in any danger from the FBI's plan.
violent extremism has become disturbingly common. Online radicalization is spiraling into real-life action. Political leaders and their families on both sides of the aisle are being threatened and attacked.
What?
I'm thinking of Paul Pelosi,
Oh,
my
please.
friend, Congressman Fred Upton,
Paul Pelosi should stop purchasing male escorts.
poll workers in Detroit, judges who have faced violent threats, and so many
Prove it.
hardworking public servants. Many have left office or quit their jobs to protect their families. Aspiring elected
Prove it.
officials are turning away from the job.
Show the evidence that
Worried
that ever
fighting for what
happened.
they believe in could make them a target. If we're not vigilant, this trend will accelerate. It could be our future. Unfortunately, these defendants have not accepted responsibility for their actions.
For the FBI's
If you want
actions.
my advice about what to do with men like this? It's simple. Impose a sentence that meets the gravity of the damage they have done to our democracy. Prove that our system is stronger than plots hatched in basements. Show the people that public service is a worthy cause and that we are united in our mission to make Michigan a better place for future generations. This sentencing, however, will not be enough on its own to protect our constitutional order. The work to repair our fraying bonds will be slow and steady. It
You
may
hear
take
what they're
years,
saying.
but we owe it to our children and their children's children to try. Today, I urge you to send a powerful signal about what we stand for as decent human beings, as Michiganders,
Decent
and as
human
patriotic
beings.
Americans.
You're not patriotic.
Thank you.
You're ridiculous. That entire thing was self-serving. It was absolutely absurd. At no point, like, did it make any sense. She has always known that the FBI created the entire thing, that these people wouldn't have even met each other were it not for the agents of the FBI bringing people together, as we all know. So the entire thing is ludicrous, and it really makes you do a big think about how jury selection is happening, right? Let's do a big think. How come all these juries keep convicting people when the evidence is so clear that nothing happened? Letting somebody do lawful defensive training on your property is not providing material support for T. You know what I'm saying? But I want people to understand the legal precedent that they are trying to set, which is making freedom of speech illegal and freedom of association illegal too. What they want to get to eventually is, hey, if we frame one of your friends for a bogus crime, well, if you knew them and had contact with them, now we can get you too. In fact, for the same amount of time as the person that we framed. And this prosecutor, she goes on to cite a unique T law in the state of Michigan that was passed in 2002 in the wake of 9/11 that for some reason has to do with aiding and abetting, that says, oh, you know, if you aid and abet somebody, you get the same punishment as them. By aiding and abetting, it's like, oh, you taught somebody how to tie a tourniquet. Oh, you let somebody do lawful legal training on your property, and then we framed that person. So now you're going to jail for 40 plus years. Is this the country that we want to live in? Really?
Okay. Further comments?
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, I have some, and I, kind of put them all together into one sort of running thing. So I'm just going to say these once and then adopt them for both defendants, unless there's something additional that either of the defendants or their attorneys say that I need to address.
Okay.
So I think, Judge, the thing that catches my attention the most is about this case, the thing that stands out the most is just how really difficult it is for anyone at this point to agree on anything. We're super polarized. But it only took 5 hours for this Jackson County jury of 12 impartial citizens to send.
Impartial citizens, really? X to doubt.
A super clear message. It's very simple. The defendants helped a terrorist, that they used their gang to do it, and they possessed firearms when they did. They agreed on that. We're going to ask Judge for the top third of the guidelines on each count imposed consecutively. So the people, just to be clear, are asking this court to impose consecutive sentencing and stack time for these charges.
Yeah, stack time for you let somebody do legal activities on your property and then we called that person a big bad guy, a T. Oh, now you must go to jail forever. It's funny to me that the left is always the ones to whine about mass incarceration and prison reform and police corruption, blah, blah, blah. And yet, here we go. Oh, you met somebody a couple times and then we framed them. Now you're guilty too. And they don't see the disconnect. It's because they don't care about anything except their own ideology. And this, what she's really talking about is criminalizing political dissent. You're not allowed to disagree. You're not allowed to even question law enforcement and the government. They now call that anti-government, anti-law enforcement sentiment. That now makes you apparently a T also. You can't disagree with the government while they sit there and talk about our democracy. You can't disagree with them. You're not even allowed to dislike them. You apparently have to love them. You have to love the FBI. You have to love the CIA. Otherwise, you're a bad guy.
We do not ask this lightly, Judge.
Yes, you
What are you
do.
asking for?
We're asking for the top third of the guidelines, and
Okay, let's move on to her other nonsensical stuff that she says.
the governor of the state of Michigan has given her impact statement. She talks about, how it's okay for people to disagree with her. And she carefully thinks about the last thing she says before she
please.
parts from someone, right? She worries about the safety of her security detail, her family, right? And I think what stood out to me
Crimea
most
River.
about this case is really what stood out to me most about this was that the gang discussed
Gang.
and dehumanized their
Oh, the gang. Now a group of people that never committed any crime, never committed an act of violence. You're now a gang. Meanwhile, actual criminals, actual gang members who are out there committing crimes, they're immediately freed from jail, put right back out on the streets to commit violent crimes again. They aren't going to jail for as long as these guys will. Child predators who are and molest children won't go to jail for as long as these guys did. That's the other thing that they're doing. They're pushing to label militia groups violent gangs, regardless of any violent crime has ever been committed. It's truly remarkable.
target so frequently. Our governor, a woman they said that they despised.
Lots of people in
Chats I
Michigan said
reviewed,
that.
Probably never forget where the governor was discussed with such in a vulgar, rating,
vulgar,
and insulting terms.
insulting
and it leads me to
terms.
believe, Judge, that it's not just that they didn't want, anyone to tell them what to do, but that they didn't want her telling them what to do. And it's hard for people, I think it's hard for people to think about public officials as people, as like humans.
This is ridiculous.
I worked judge in the Department of Attorney General. I had a hate crimes unit.
Hate crimes unit.
domestic terrorism.
Yeah, because hate
I reviewed
crimes
death
aren't
threats
real.
to public officials, different ones, like every
They're made up.
single
A crime
day.
is a crime.
And
The
I've
emotion
heard so
behind
many
it shouldn't
people
really
tell me
matter.
That it's just part of the job to hold public office to get death threats.
Yeah, it is.
And it shouldn't be
It's
that way.
happened for a long.
And the First Amendment,
That's
is in
history.
place so people are allowed and protected to disagree with their elected
No, but they're
officials,
not
and they
though.
should do
That's
so.
the thing.
And if you don't agree,
That's all these people were doing was talk. There was no actual plan, except by the agents of the FBI. So you don't have the First Amendment, actually. They keep invoking it, though. Oh, you're allowed to disagree. No, you're not. They've made it clear. You will be banned. You will be debanked. You will be canceled. You'll be deplatformed. You are not allowed to disagree. You will be punished for disagreeing. In fact, the FBI might manufacture a plot to kidnap the governor and then try to claim that you were behind it.
with those elected officials, you should vote them out. It's expected and it's healthy for a democracy to have the First Amendment. But death threats should not be a part of the job. Politicians,
What?
hard to remember this, but they're people.
Oh, here's
They're
a
people with
question.
families with small children, people.
Here, why don't you do a big think, lady, and ask yourself, why are these politicians so hated? What about what they're doing? What about their criminality makes them so hated? Huh? Is it, I thought they were supposed to have popular support. I don't think that they do. There were lots of people in Michigan in 2020 who were saying far worse things, I am sure, about her. Unconstitutional
Kids live reading the
lockdowns.
internet and hearing those things and seeing those things. And in
Then
today's
don't take
America,
the
Judge, if
job.
you're a politician.
Oh,
Your
today's
husband
America.
being attacked by an intruder in your home who's looking to try to kill you with a hammer.
I would
because they
object. What
disagree
relevance
with
does
your
that have to this?
policies.
This has nothing to do with this case. She continues to be prejudicial. And by the way, maybe don't invite male escorts into your home.
Keep going.
That's today's America. And in
Oh,
today's
that's
America,
today's
you can
America.
get shot at a baseball game because you're playing with the team and someone disagrees with your, policies and your votes in the legislature. And in today's America, like we just saw, you can sign up to be a poll worker, to work an election, and get death threats for volunteering your time to make
Oh,
sure
please.
that democracy works.
Democracy.
That's where we are, and that should
Our
not
democracy.
be part of the job. And frankly,
Then don't do
I
the
think we're
job.
at sort of
No
a
one's making you do
perilous
it.
point in our nation's history. I think
If you don't
America
like the
is
heat,
better
get out of the
than this.
kitchen.
But,
America's better
January
than
6th,
this.
it didn't happen in a vacuum.
Oh, here it comes.
The actions these defendants, all three of these defendants participated in at
What?
the Capitol, our Michigan Capitol, on April 30th, 2020, it was a dress rehearsal for the
It
violence.
was a dress rehearsal by the FBI. Stephen D'Antuono, the head of the FBI Detroit field office at the time this occurred, on April 30th, 2020, was promoted to head of the DC field office prior to January 6th to oversee that. This was the dress rehearsal, but not on the part of the citizens, on the part of federal bureaucracy and a federal Bureau of Investigation that is only targeting people who have disagreements, political disagreements. Look at the Twitter files. What was the FBI doing? Not going after child predators, but going after people who had a different political opinion than them. So no, she's lying. And let's also talk about the fact that those guys were attending a lawful gathering, lawful rally. They were lawfully carrying their firearms. That was totally lawful. No one got arrested for that because it wasn't illegal. And what happened? The FBI informant Dan Chappell is wearing a wire and says, "Oh, I think that these guys might do something." Based on what we don't know, he just said so. And so the FBI calls the Michigan Capitol Police and tells them, "Hey, stand down and open the doors. Let these guys in so we can get a photo op." That's what happened. The guys got COVID tests on their way into the building. Nobody stormed anything. They went inside, went through the line, did COVID screening, stood around as the media took pictures of them, and then left. Nothing violent occurred. If they had violent intentions, they had their opportunity when they were standing in the Lansing Capitol armed. Nothing happened. They didn't do anything.
That occurred at the nation's capital on January 6th.
But listen to her
2021.
lie.
It was
Through her
normalized, their
teeth.
behavior on April 30th was normalized by commentators and even some politicians. What you remember when Lieutenant Green got up on the stand and testified in this case? He was there that day, and he described it in our trial as bordering on anarchy. And that it was like
please.
a 55-gallon drum of gasoline, and the people in the rotunda were holding the match. That
Just
is
standing
not
there while the media took pictures
it's
of them.
not a married band of patriots coming to see their government at work. It's not political speech. It's intimidation of politicians. And it's threats of violence by armed individuals to prove a political point.
There was no threat of violence, though. Nobody threatened anybody, as far as I'm aware. Isn't that illegal anyways? Isn't it called terroristic threats or something? So no, that didn't happen. But I thought, according to our founding fathers, the government should fear the people. There should be some intimidation, right? Oh yeah, if you talk about the founding fathers, you're now a T also.
January 6th couldn't have happened, Judge, but for the normalization of what these defendants did at the Michigan Capitol on that day.
They did
But I do
nothing.
think I think America is better than this, Judge. And it's not like their behavior, though, is just talk or some pictures in
But it
front of the
was.
door.
That is
went
exactly
viral.
what it was.
Their gang on multiple occasions,
Gang.
Judge, were itching for a shootout with law enforcement.
How come it didn't happen
law
then?
Enforcement, it's not just politicians. Officers whose families live every single day with the idea that their loved one might not
Oh,
come home at the end of
please.
their shift. The police at the Capitol, the police in the governor's security detail, the police at any of the protests. When Paul Bellar deployed his QRF, Quick Reaction Force, and Morrison
He didn't have a QRF.
led from afar.
They keep
asking for
saying
sit
this.
reps all night. When Paul Bellar put on his body armor and took his rifle and his sidearm and took more ammunition to that Home Depot for
What?
some gun part sale that he believed was illegal. He took more ammunition than our CHS Dan, who testified. Dan testified that he took less ammunition to the green zone in Iraq to defend it, right? He did that because he wanted to kill feds.
Then why
And
didn't he?
said so afterwards.
No, he was just talking. If he wanted to do something, he could have, he didn't. Like, they keep doing this stuff where they'll take something that people have done, something innocuous, and then they'll come up with this narrative that, like, oh yeah, they really wanted to do something. Like, how come you guys were watching them for over a year and nobody did anything? And even with 12 informants, 2 undercover agents, pushing, prodding, telling people to come up with a plot and a plan, how come they still didn't do anything? It's ridiculous.
Right? It was the police that they hated just as much as the governor, if not more. Exhibit after exhibit. And these men that participated in the QRFs, that even structured it or led from afar, who weren't even there, they used the excuse that they were helping people. These men who did not live in the areas that they were traveling to, right, who were essentially outside agitators, they were coming into cities, mixing with peaceful protesters who actually had real issues to solve and were protesting about. They weren't helping anyone. These QRFs, they weren't protecting anyone. These men, all 3 of these men, ran essentially a terrorist training camp in Jackson County. They brought men from as far away as Grand Rapids and other parts of Michigan to run a terrorist training camp in Jackson County. And the goal of the terrorist training camp...
This is the other thing. She starts... I want people to really understand what she's saying. A legal, lawful militia group is now a terrorist training camp. Do you understand, like, what they're trying to do here? It's insane.
Like Musico said in the recording that we have and played for this court and the jury, they wanted to bring Fallujah to the United States.
It's called capping. She knows that. Talking smack. It's what guys do.
Like, think about that. Guerrilla warfare, hand-to-hand combat in the streets of Jackson County, in the streets of this state, in the streets of this nation. That was their goal. And they did more than just talk about it, Judge. They used operational security, you know,
like what?
So they wouldn't be detected. They set up a network
operational
with others around the country, and their gang,
what?
Wolverine Watchmen, their brand, that notoriety, that's what drew other terrorists to them, and that's what drew
What terrorists? Who? Who's been charged with terrorism?
them to be connected with Adam Fox and Barry Croft.
No, actually, it was the FBI that allowed them to meet. None of them would have met without the FBI's informants. It was Steve Robeson who introduced Barry Croft to Adam Fox. Barry lived in Delaware. Why the hell would he want to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer? He lives in a different state. Why does he care about her lockdowns or what? It doesn't affect him. They were following him for a year prior to that. And I mean physical surveillance as he's going into grocery stores. He's in Walmart buying food. They're following him around. Oh, look at him. Look at him buying that lunch meat, you know. Oh, look at him taking his kids to school. Look at him just doing his job every day. There were planes flying overhead as he's, you know, doing his job as a freaking truck driver. It's absolutely nonsensical.
And I told you about this chart earlier, Judge, with this thing. They
this
were at the top of that food chain. These
what food chain? There wasn't a food chain.
Administrators.
There's a group of loosely associated people that would occasionally get together on a property, grill some food, drink beers as the FBI gets them stoned, and they would talk shit and legally shoot their guns together. It's what guys do in groups. There's no chain of command. This isn't fucking... I mean, Jesus Christ.
And the rule setters of this gang. They planted the seed. One of them, preached operational security. They vetted prospective members.
What operational security? They were filled with feds. Oh, I guess they didn't actually have any. That's right. But they like to use these words because it sounds big, scary.
Figured out how to recruit. They disseminated propaganda. And they knowingly united terrorists
knowingly united terrorists. United. So people shared memes online. Now that's disseminating propaganda. a bunch of people got together in like a Discord server or a Facebook group. That's now recruiting terrorists. Do you see what they're doing and what they're saying?
A common goal. And because
This is why people should care about this and should be paying attention to this. And it's woefully underreported.
of that joint effort, Judge, we believe they deserve the same sentence, the same amount of time imposed by this court, because it's impossible to separate the culpability of one defendant from another in this case. That's our position. You know, Michigan, like I said, and we talked about earlier, I mentioned, you know, we have these really unique state level anti-terrorism laws that
That's why the FBI chose Michigan to manufacture this hoax. It is because of this really unique law that would allow them to make shit up and then charge people for it.
criminalize the buildup of a terrorist attack.
See?
And the sentence this
They
court
tell on
imposes sets
themselves.
precedent. You know, Michigan in this case are a leader in this space, and the defendant's sentence, their sentence should be commensurate with setting a precedent. And one of the goals of sentencing that the court knows, deterring others from providing material support to terrorists.
But there wasn't any terrorists. Like, none of this was terrorism. It was the FBI making stuff up. The FBI was the one that plotted it. So, like, what?
It should show that the buildup
So
to a terrorist
frustrating.
attack will be taken seriously.
There wasn't a
as
terror
seriously
attack.
as an attack.
What terror attack? What is she talking about?
Judge. And here's what's interesting. It's how aiding and abetting in the state actually works, right? Even if a person doesn't actually pull the trigger themselves or doesn't have the guts to pull the trigger themselves, they are just as guilty as the person that they are helping if they are helping that person.
Well, and what do you mean by helping? Like, oh, I met somebody 2 or 3 times and let them, you know, barbecue food on my property. And like, I did some medical training with them and taught them how to tie a tourniquet. Like, what? That's now helping, aiding and abetting? This is ridiculous.
That's how aiding and abetting works. That's what we're asking this court to do. I just want to offer one final thought before I sit down. The court imposes the sentence and allows the other defendants to talk.
She's
We wanna thank the
unbelievable.
court. We want to thank the jury. We want to thank law enforcement, FBI, and MSP. You know,
We want to thank the FBI for framing innocent men and manufacturing a fake DT case for us, so we have something to sneed about.
they all had an important contribution in recognizing the threat here and ensuring the safety of the people of the state of Michigan.
What?
You know, we want to ask that citizens in the state who see
Unreal.
something like what Dan saw, you know, things that happen in chat rooms or online that are concerning,
Listen.
bring that information to law enforcement like Dan did. You know, it was Dan's immediate reporting, I think, and
There was no recording. No. He made a claim about there being threats of violence against law enforcement, but there was no evidence. We learned that at this trial. At this trial, in the state case, he was asked, well, where's the evidence of these threats to violence against law enforcement that you witnessed that made you contact the FBI? He couldn't say. And you want to know what's interesting? Dan did not just come upon a group on Facebook. He claimed that he was trying to maintain perishable tactical skills, right, from his time in the military. There are plenty of groups that you can pay for. You can pay to maintain your tactical skills, right? There are plenty of defensive training groups that you can pay for. Why didn't he do that? Why didn't he join any of the larger 2A groups? Why is it that he chose a random group on Facebook that had 15 people in it and none of them had any military training? How was he going to maintain his perishable tactical skills? That was his initial cover story for how he came across the group. You know what's interesting? When he contacted the FBI, he did so first through a detective named Detective Ramirez, who happened to be on the Violent Gang Task Force and just so happened to have an FBI supervisor. Let's do a big think. Detective Ramirez was Big Dan's landlord. You see how they keep using the word gang? You know, Steve Robeson was given a database by the FBI of people they wanted to target. Let's do a big think. Maybe Dan Chappell was too. I'm not buying the story that he organically came across this small private group on Facebook as he was looking for Pro 2A groups where he could maintain his perishable tactical training skills. It makes no sense. None of it makes sense.
The information he passed to law enforcement.
But listen to her act like he's some kind of hero. He's a scumbag. By the way, he wanted to work for the FBI. Okay, he was someone that went to Iraq, came back, and was getting paid $54,000 a year as a contractor for the Postal Service. He wasn't even successful as a truck driver. He said in text messages to his handling agent, Jason Chambers, that by framing these innocent men, he was building his resume. He's now using the $54,000 for 6 months of work that the FBI paid him in envelopes of cash, and the $4,000 brand new laptop they gave him to take college courses, criminal justice classes, so he can go become an FBI agent. This was about himself, serving himself. It had nothing to do with, oh, he was just a concerned citizen, oh, he was a patriot. No.
And his actions.
And I refuse to let any of you off the hook.
It's grave actions, really.
It's not happening. Not on my watch.
Time and time again over the course of several months. You know, he told us about how he served his country, our country here in the military. But I think his sacrifice really continued.
Oh, please. His sacrifice where he's made tons of money, got envelopes of cash.
Marine Watchman repeatedly.
Got his little in at the FBI.
They misappropriated.
Got a new laptop
all the
for
time
his classes.
Really unpatriotic objective.
Oh,
you know,
his sacrifice. Got a new house.
But really, I think
what?
throughout the course of the trial, I think I realized that, like, you know, Dan is what really a patriot is.
Oh, please.
We should all try to be doing. Judge, the
Entrap
PSI,
and frame innocent men.
Consecutive sentencing. It referenced the guidelines.
I think not.
Agree with them. And it states that, you know, the gang charge can be stacked, and we are asking that it does.
All right, I can't watch anymore. I've already watched this, so I've had enough. What I would suggest is that people pay attention to this. There's a reason that I'm spending so much time covering the federal case. I will get to the state case as well. The reason I'm doing a documentary on this and trying to get the truth out, because what actually happened is nothing like what they're saying, what she is saying. For a judge to allow this to even move forward is despicable. And I want people to understand that, like, you think that this doesn't affect you because other men were framed and it hasn't happened to you, your dad, your brother, your husband yet. It will. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's why you should care. Even the leftists, they should care. You know what's interesting? Antifa has just been charged as domestic terrorists. I don't like Antifa, but this stupid little group in Atlanta, I don't like calling that domestic terrorism. You know, they plan to, like, violently attack someone. Okay, then charge them for that. But what they're doing is moving to call everyone that they don't like, anyone that dissents or questions the government, you're now a DT. And I would caution people that are on the left that haven't looked into this case and think it's okay what's happening. You will be next. You might not be the target of these agencies right now, but once they're done rounding up all the people that they don't like, you know, the people on the other side of the aisle, you think they're going to stop there? No, eventually they will come for you. So everyone needs to pay attention. Everybody needs to care. And when you see the truth, it will shock you. It is so disgusting. Anyways, that's all I have for today. I continue to be very busy working on this. As you can see, it is a massive story. There's lots of moving parts. There's lots of people involved, lots of information, lots of people I have to verify things with, corroborate stories with. But I think you'll be surprised by just how egregious what happened was. So anyways, yeah, I hope everybody has a good day. Read